Vamos entrando. Vem, vem. Vem comigo. Vem, vem. Vem comigo. Tchananã. Como é que vocês estão, coisas lindas? Vamos esperar a galera entrar com força. Hoje o dia foi bem agitado, com muitas bênçãos. E aí, meu filho, tamo junto? Vamos nessa, vamos começar. Deixa eu abrir aqui minhas perguntinhas. Vou deixar aqui no ponto de bala. Você colocou umas perguntas bem difíceis, viu? Você não facilitou pra mim, não. Você não facilitou. Só quero te dizer isso. Isso é ele, né? Que já mandou o convite aqui, eu já vi. Já vou aceitar. Sejam todos bem-vindos. Para você que vai assistir essa live depois no YouTube. Minha sogra, minha linda do meu coração. Que saudade de você, minha velha. Vou aí no Brasil te dar um cheiro. Povo bonito, animado. Maris, que tá sempre aqui com a gente toda semana. Como eu amo vocês. Obrigada pelo apoio que vocês dão pra gente. Por estarem aqui. Muitas oportunidades. O professor de hoje, que a gente vai estar entrevistando a live, ele é o professor da Andrews. O cara é um gênio. E eu vou já colocar ele aqui na live. Eita, já esqueci de colocar o Guilherme. Tava falando. Desculpa, Guilherme! Eu achei que você já estava aqui na live. Sejam bem-vindos, tá? A nossa live hoje vai ser com um professor lá da
aí, galera?
Meu amigo, eu tava falando contigo, achando que você já estava aqui. E eu, cadê o Guilherme? Depois que eu me toquei que eu tinha que te adicionar. Boa noite, Guilherme. Como é que tá o frio aí em Nova York? Tá mais maneiro?
Aqui tá tranquilo, aqui tá mais chuva, né?
Chuva?
Eu acho que vai
Tá chovendo!
ser enquanto eu ajeito aqui a minha câmera.
Vai se ajeitando aí. Aqui...
Não, aqui tá tranquilo, sabe? Parece inverno brasileiro, parece inverno do sul do Brasil.
Entendi. Aqui em Chicago hoje fez sol, fez 41, cara, você acredita?
Mentira.
Fez Fahrenheit, né? Fahrenheit. Mas tava muito gostosinho o dia, apareceu o céu azul e a temperatura tá melhorando, graças a Deus. E aí no Brasil, meu povo, como é que tá a temperatura? Já vamos fazer o nosso merchan e você já vai avisando aí, Guilherme, pro nosso convidado para ele se preparar. Olha essa camisa. Semana passada, gente, eu tava com a camisa azul e hoje eu tô com a camisa preta. A gente tem várias cores, preto, azul, branca. Você pode personalizar, inclusive, através da nossa loja, arifissionheart.com, no nosso site, para você que fala português, espanhol, inglês e japonês. Você vai poder ter acesso a esses materiais, a xícara. Mostra aí, Guilherme, a nossa xícara.
Olha.
E esse é um dos poucos modelos. Assim, essas xícaras que o Guilherme mostra aqui na nossa live são xícaras que são exclusivas, assim, que foram os primeiros moldes, né, que a gente pode dizer assim. Vão ser para colecionadores, mas a gente lá dentro da loja, a gente tem garrafa térmica, copo térmico, mochila, capa de celular, capa de fone de ouvido. Na loja a gente tem muita coisa disponível. E, inclusive, Guilherme, a gente abriu uma novidade, mas isso é mais para frente, para as pessoas que quiserem vender para apoiar o nosso projeto, vão poder vender o nosso produto e ganhar comissão e poder doar o percentual. Tipo assim, tipo afiliado da Hotmart, que você vende um produto, você tem a comissão da venda, e aí a pessoa vai estar ajudando a gente a vender os produtos. E não só isso, com a venda dos produtos, ela vai estar patrocinando o nosso livro para transformar em filme para ela poder assistir no stream dela. Uma salva de palmas, meu amigo, porque a nossa mente é muito extraordinária e é Deus que vai nos dando essa sabedoria. O Anthony já está aqui com a gente e eu já vou adicionar ele. Vou mandar aqui o convite para ele. Deixa eu mandar aqui. E aí ele já junta com a gente. Guilherme, seu microfone tá mudo. Voltou agora.
Hey.
Hey,
How's it
well, let me
going, buddy?
There we go. Hey, man.
Hey, awesome. Thanks again, man. We really appreciate you being here with us. I just want to introduce you to my co-host, Kezia Damas Gomes. She is the wife of a really good friend of mine. We started this podcast 2 years ago, and we got this merchandise. So please make sure to send me in the message your address, so we can send you a little bit of Artificial Hearts merchandise. I know all of you guys are watching. We have a really special guest, a really smart, brilliant guy, Anthony Bosman. So say hi to him. We're really grateful to have him here, and we want to say thank you again for accepting the invitation. I think we're gonna have a really intelligent, really high IQ, and fun conversation. Kezia, do you want to say any words
Sure.
to welcome our guest?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for enjoying with us. This is night. This is a special night for us and for my followers. We have this big opportunity for making this interview with you because Guilherme told me your mind is brilliant and it's big opportunity for us learning more about you, your story, your career, and share with us about your experience. And let's go.
Awesome. Kezia, we got a lot of questions. I know we got a lot of stuff to talk about, so I'll let you begin, and then we'll do a little bit more because it's gonna be a really fun evening,
Let's
and we don't have that much
let
time.
him let him introduce
Yeah, yeah,
himself.
yeah. Please tell us about yourself, Anthony. Where you at now, and what you're doing to our audience.
Sure, yeah. My name is Anthony Bosman. I'm a professor of mathematics here at Andrews University in Michigan, United States. I've been here at Andrews for the last 6 going on 7 years now, and that's a real joy.
Wow,
Awesome.
it's good. He's short, but exactly. See, your mind is math mind. Your mind is math math. Exactly, point. My name is Anthony Bosman. I am teaching Andrews University. Exactly. And my first question for you, for start this conversation, is Anthony. How did your interest in math begin?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. I think growing up, I was always a bit of a numbers guy, so I enjoyed math from a young age. I'm told that when I was very young, I went to school, I was very shy, but the time I would talk is when there was a equation on the board, right? And then as I went throughout elementary, middle school, primary school, into secondary school, just really fell in love with mathematics and also with teaching and helping other people understand mathematics as well. In university, I explored a lot of disciplines adjacent to mathematics, things like economics or computer science or physics, but it was the abstract mathematics I enjoyed the most, and so that's what I kept coming back to. And then I just kept going, got my PhD, and now I serve as a professor of mathematics.
Wow. Wonderful. Also.
And Anthony, I think maybe a lot of people don't know this about you, but like I said, you're a really smart guy. You did your PhD really early, really young. You went to Stanford University. How was that experience like? Coming. You went to FLA, right? Forest Lake Academy, is that correct?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
So how was it kind of like going from this like smaller maybe context in Florida to like all these like really huge, big, famous universities? And what kind of advice do you have maybe to our viewers who are thinking of applying? We have a lot of Christians who are watching this podcast. How can they maybe kind of balance their faith and kind of pursue excellence like you did?
Well, that's a great question. I think definitely going to university, there was a significant adjustment of, if you're used to being at the top of a class, and then all your classmates were also at the top of the high school class. Now,
Yeah.
now
Like
it's
going to
like,
Yale.
yeah, that's right. So it's, I think you just have to adjust your expectations. Sometimes it's like you get to the top 5% or something, and you think you're failing, but it's like it's just because everyone around you is also very good at what they're doing. So I think just keeping that in mind, it's okay to be average. Gives you a little bit of sanity. In terms of pursuing excellence, I think we put a lot of pressure, particularly in the States, and I don't know if this is the context in Brazil as well, but there's a lot of pressure to get into a particular university, either for undergraduate or for grad school as well. And with that pressure, I think it puts too much of an emphasis on just getting in, and you kind of forget about, well, if I do get in, what am I going to do when I'm there? I think there's a great education to be found at several different places, all over the world, and so I don't want to, a young person to have the whole identity tied up in if they get into one of the big, 5 or top 10 or whatever the dream school is. I think we can put a lot of that into that, put a lot of identity and investment into that. And a lot of it is quite outside your control. There's a lot of randomness that goes into who's selected. And when you realize that, if you accept it's not really a value judgment, it's just the dice happen to fall where they did, right? And so I would try to de-invest a little bit from having too much of your identity built around where you got into or what where your degree is from. Most days I never think about where I went to college, right? Like I just go with my life. It doesn't come up at all, I met some great friends, had some great opportunities there. I think I had a good education, but it's not really core to who I am, and I'm really thankful for that.
My next question for you is very interesting because this environment in social media, everyone talking about AI, and then you were studying Stanford at the high of the bubble and during the early development of AI. Guilherme told me, and what are impact of this on the media and human life? Because for me, it's little bit strange. It's normal because I'm a millennial, but it's little bit strange because it's very speedy in social media right now. Everyone speak about AI. But what is your perception about AI in human life?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of directions we can go with that, and so I'm happy to go whichever direction you guys want to go. This last year, I think a lot of significant AI developments really became public with ChatGPT, OpenAI, their work, and now a lot of generative AI where you can produce images and videos, right, that look photorealistic. And I think for many people, this really caught them off guard, right? So what's to be said about AI? First, there's incredible promise, incredible potential, but I think it's also important for us to just keep in mind like how these systems work. And so the way a technology like ChatGPT or Google Bard works, like how is it able to give me an essay? How can I write this prompt of, write me a 1,000-word essay about pick your favorite, topic, pick your favorite Russian, author, and have, whatever you want to have ChatGPT write an essay about. And it really uses a principle that many of us are probably used to from texting, that when you're texting a sentence, you get these recommendations for what word comes next, right? So if I'm sending a text message and I'm texting, I lost my phone will suggest, maybe keys, maybe wallet, maybe glasses, probably not, I don't know, something like rabbit, or I don't know, if I have a rabbit, maybe I'll know, right? But there's some words that, or house, I probably would say I lost my house, right? Like that's not a very common sentence people use. And so there's this basic principle of looking at what words are commonly grouped together and then using that to predict the next word. We've extrapolated that really powerful to make these essays, to make, ChatGPT and other kinds of technologies that can generate content, generate essays, generate poems, generate sonnets. And on the one hand, that's really impressive. On the other hand, it's not intelligent, though. It's like there's not a mind that went into this. This is just a statistical analysis of things that frequently appear together, right? And that's why these systems are so prone to hallucinate, to make up fake information, to make up false information. It presents itself in a voice that's very confident, but often we mistake that confidence for competence, but it's not nearly as competent as we might want it to be. And so I think whenever we look at these kinds of things of AI playing chess, AI creating images or videos, there's no ghost in the machine. There's no mind. There's no consciousness. It's just doing a cluster analysis. It's just looking at what kinds of things, what are common patterns, and kind of reiterating on those patterns. And I think that should like demystify it a little bit for us. There's nothing creepy. There's nothing strange going on. That's it. It's just looking at common patterns and iterating on them. It's just applied statistics. So if AI sounds scary, just call it applied statistics, and then it sounds dull and boring and something you can sleep to. But that said, for a lot of people, I think there has developed a mythology around AI, and even many of the developers, many people pushing for an investment in AI, where there's a sense that this is going to solve all of our problems, right? So the company DeepMind, who does a lot of significant cutting-edge AI research, their mission statement is something like to solve the problem of intelligence and then use that to solve all other problems. So it's like if we can achieve superintelligence, then we solve everything. Because if we get a machine smart enough, it can tackle climate change, it can tackle food distribution, it can tackle politics, like all problems will be solved by this machine. And I think this hope is, I think fundamentally it's a religious hope, right? In tech, you have a lot of people who don't have necessarily strong religious commitments, but I think what replaces those traditional religious structures is placing this hope, this eschatological, this like end time vision in technology. The AI becomes the Messiah figure, right? Messiah will come and set the world right, and everything will be restored. And then also like even the problem of death and the problem of mortality, right? It's ultimately we'll be able to upload a consciousness and we'll be able to overcome the limits of our mortality. I think there's a lot of very wealthy, very tech-savvy people who bought into this great myth, and they're investing a lot, and they built some cool toys. You know, there's cool. You can now type in and say, you know, draw me a picture of a dog playing the piano, and you can get the image generated. But I would be cautious to buy too much into that larger mythology around it.
Yeah. Oh, it's a lot of for me, honestly. But I think when they think AI, I think it's big challenge for everyone because we need the opportunity for taking this and make it biggest things. But last week, the Professor Barbara, it's my advisor in Brazil, he talked about AI introducing Brazil culture in companies is challenge, but no impossible. Everyone is learning very quickly. But my next question for you, Anthony, is what are the challenges and opportunity that you see in AI, the first one, and what are particularly the ethical question that's raises, because what is transhuman? Assume it my follows no understand what means, but it's big conversation, big discussion today, but organize my mind because it's different terms, different challenge for us, for everyone. But what do you think about behavior in social media, behavior in new companies? Because every company's observation, the AI, what I do, what I need, improve my employees, improve my my challenge for grow up. What I mean, it's a little bit confusion for me, for everyone. But what do you think about what are transhuman? What impact is in transhuman AI?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot there. So one direction we can talk about is just like ethical challenges around AI, and one aspect of that challenge is the incentives are aligned so that every tech company wants to be the first tech company to get like the best model, right? You want to, it's like if I slow down, if Google slows down, Microsoft is going to run ahead, right? If Microsoft slows down, then here comes whoever else. And so among the tech companies, there's a lot of pressure to be the fastest to develop the technology. And when you have that pressure to be the fastest to develop the technology, then you often don't have time for ethical reflection and questions about, well, what are some restraints, how we might use this technology? You saw this perhaps with OpenAI deciding to release ChatGPT to the public when its capabilities were still very poorly understood. And then immediately Google rushed to release its technology. And others are, they're all rushing. But not only is it something on the level of companies, there's then the sentiment that if my country isn't the first to harness the power of AI, in the United States, the conversation often goes, if we aren't the first ones to harness the power of AI, then China will, right? So there's this global tension that comes in that, well, we can't slow down, so we have to keep running ahead with developing this technology, because if we don't, someone else will, and we think we're the good guys, so we want to be the ones in control of it. So that creates, I think, challenge, and just there's not a lot of time to put guardrails in place to protect against some of the potential ill effects of artificial intelligence. But those are like policy questions. So we can, you can talk about what would be good public policy, what would be good ways to try to regulate and put safety in place around artificial intelligence. I think what you're hinting at with this idea of transhumanism is beyond the discussion of policy, there's this bigger goal or this bigger mythos that's driving this whole thing. And that is the ambition that we will achieve singularity. Human and artificial intelligence can merge, right? And so first of all, I think there's we don't have there's no good reason to think this is actually achievable. It's certainly not achievable in a reasonable time span. It's like, yes, some of the technology is really impressive.
Excuse me, Anthony, but in my perception is that we don't have time for ethical discussion because it's very quick evolution, and everyone is, oh my gosh, it's new tools and it's a new opportunity for making more, improve my abilities in social media in my company, and then not have time available for ethical discussion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so in one sense, we've already had this with social media, and that's probably a good example if you think back over the last 20 years, the impact of social media on society. And it's just now, I think, we're really coming to grapple with some of the ill effects, both on individuals, on mental health, right? Just the incredible depression and loneliness and feelings of isolation. So a technology that was supposed to bring us together and connect us left many people feeling quite disconnected, quite empty, right? Doom scrolling, where you scroll and then at the end you just feel so empty inside. But then also the impact on our society, perhaps impact on democracy, ways social media has spread disinformation and misinformation. So I think there's you can imagine if that was the case with social media, well, now we're just running into this again, but intensifying it with the ability to quickly make deep fake videos and images, right? So in the context of an election, you can imagine the week before an election, some video comes out that shows some scandalous thing about a candidate. And the problem is we're getting the ability to create generative AI so strong that you can have very realistic, videos that you have no idea if it's real or not. And maybe people have seen some of these. There was a video going around the internet like the Pope wearing a puffy coat, or a picture of a picture of like Donald Trump in the U.S. being arrested, and all these like cops filing on him. And so people have made these images, and the problem is not just that some people believe those images are true when they're false. The other problem is now for any image, you don't know to trust it or not. Even the real images, right? So maybe someone actually does do something scandalous, and a picture comes out, a photograph comes out, an audio file comes out, and now people can just say, oh, that's fake, right? And so our ability to discern what is true is really being compromised. If I can't trust what I see with my eyes, right, then how can I know what's true? And it leads us all the deeper into this post-truth society where, well, I don't know what is true, so I'm just going to ignore it all and just kind of go with my gut, right, or go with what my community, what my tribe tells me to think. And then that can deepen polarization. It can deepen a lot of the divides we have in society. So I think there's some serious concerns there where we should be thinking about, hey, maybe before we start rolling this stuff out so much, we need to think about how can we develop some watermark technology and these kinds of things that will show that when an image has been altered, you're able to have a record of that. People can see that it has been. Historically, the way we would deal with this problem is through institutions, right? It's I'm not sure what is true, what is false, and so we have good social institutions that would tell us, you know, you can go to a trusted newspaper, or you can go to a trusted university, or you can go to a trusted government, and you can trust them to give you a reliable account of this is true and this is false. But the problem is now people have such low trust institutions. You know, half the population doesn't trust that newspaper, or doesn't trust the university, or doesn't trust the government. And so, you know, it's becoming all the more difficult, I think, for people to just discern, well, what should I believe? Like, what is the common facts around which we can organize society and have civil discourse?
Well, that's awesome, Anthony. And I think kind of something that's hovering a little bit on the conversation is the future of AI. Like, what will AI bring? So I have two questions. One is a very kind of basic, very layman's question, which is the connection kind of between transhumanism and AI. And I think it's basically a question you see a lot of us who aren't like in the STEM area, or a lot of like the kids are asking, are we closer to the Matrix? So I just wanted to hear you maybe comment a little bit about that. And then after, I have a question on AGI. But before you answer, Artificial Hearts Podcast is brought to you by Artificial Hearts. Artificial Hearts is a
We
anime readaptation of
send this church
Dostoevsky's
for
classic
him.
work, The Brothers Karamazov. So this podcast was brought to you. Get your mug. The Super Bowl is coming, right? So whether you're rooting for the San Francisco 49ers or the Kansas City Chiefs or Taylor Swift or Travis Kelce, make sure to get your Artificial Hearts a mug and have a great Super Bowl with your
Exactly.
friends and family. So Anthony, let's go to our our two-part question. We want to know about, are we getting closer to the Matrix? And then let's talk a little bit about what is AGI.
Yeah, okay, good. So now we're almost passing into the realm of science fiction, but many people think that this could be not science fiction, but science fact in the not so distant future. So let's talk through some of these terms. So fun fact about The Matrix. For those who've seen The Matrix, I know it's a little bit of an old movie now, but I think in the movie, the basic thesis is, you know, people are in this mind matrix, the machines have taken over. But in the movie, the machines use humans as batteries, right? So the humans serve as. So that was not the original script. In the original script, because this doesn't make sense. Humans aren't that good of a, we wouldn't be very good batteries. You could build much more efficient batteries just out of machinery. In the original script, the humans were the neural network that was used for the machines to operate. And so they kept the humans and kept them running so that they could like hijack our brains and run off of our organic neural network, which I think is a far more interesting plot for the Matrix. So the machines actually needed the human brains to work, but then it was decided, I believe, that it was too complicated for the general audience. And so they changed it to humans are batteries. But can you imagine a day where you really have humans and technology merging on this level where, you know, your consciousness is uploaded to some machine, or we escape our bodies, right? Fundamentally, it's an escape from body because body is mortal. So it's like, if I don't want to age, if I don't want to die, and you see these billionaires spending a fortune trying to slow down death or trying to escape death, then, you know, we need to move from our body to either some other kind of body or just a be bodiless altogether. I think this vision for immortality assumes a lot about what it means to be human, and it assumes that our body is just a limitation, right? That your body is just the thing that kind of like keeps you trapped. But it's almost a kind of like dualism, that you have this essence, a mind or a soul, right? That can, if free from the body, that is immortality. So the image of immortality here is if you can free if not your soul, the central cognitive functions from the body, now you can be immortal. And I'm just deeply suspicious of that picture, right? I don't think our bodies are just incidental to who we are, or even to our cognition. I think a lot of our thinking isn't just taking place in our head. A lot of our thinking is actually coming from the fact that we're embodied creatures. And so perhaps this is how my faith informs my thinking about this. But my understanding from the biblical picture of what it means to be human is it's a much more integrated whole, right? And so I think that this whole prospect of, escaping our bodies, this has a long history in Russian philosophy, but I don't think this is a good basis for what to be human. And so that makes me deeply suspect from the beginning of any of these visions. Some visions aren't escaping your body. Some visions are not necessarily like uploading your brain to a machine. Some visions are instead just augmenting your body, right? So replacing an eye with an even more powerful piece of technology. And in some ways, we already have augmented bodies. I mean, each one of us has a cell phone in our pocket, which functions as, you carry it with you everywhere, your connection to the internet. Many people have hearing devices or glasses. And that's a very,
Anthony, sorry to interrupt you. What about the Elon Musk thing that everybody's talking about? Yeah. Is that just like
big discussion? This is wicked.
Yeah.
About this chip.
Right. So this is something where it's like obviously very useful, immediate medical applications to have a neural implant for those who, if you have something like ALS or whatever disease you might have that limits your motor ability, for you to, I don't know if you've seen this video going around of a monkey implanted with a Neuralink who is playing on the computer screen, bouncing a ball back and forth, but is able to control it with his thoughts. And you can think like, yes, there's some great medical applications of this, and we should be excited about those, right? That give people agency again who have missed that agency. But even the way Elon Musk talks about this, it's in the context of this bigger vision of trying to just increase the connection speed between your brain and the rest of the synthetic world. It's like what limits us now is you're limited how much information you get from your computers, from your phone screen into your brain, and how much information you get down because you have to type very slowly, right? So it's like you type 50 words a minute or something on typing. But if you could increase that speed 100-fold, 1,000-fold, right, then we can have a much more powerful synthesis. But I just think about like how much damage just even our low bandwidth phones have already done to people's mental health, to people's, and I'm like, man, I don't know if this vision of being connected to the internet all the time and having all information at, a thought, to the place in which you cease to be able to distinguish your thoughts from that of like the noise of the, interwebs. I don't know if that's an attractive vision, actually. Like, forget if it's possible. Like, let's assume it is possible. Say in 10 years.
How much we can handle it, right? I guess that's kind of the ethical question, right?
Right. So the question is like, is the human psyche capable of handling that?
That much, yeah.
And then, like, does there become like a loss of identity in that, a loss of something more fundamental? I just think the constant noise, like, any of us probably already have too much noise in our minds. And we're trying to find a way to recover some sense of stillness, some sense of peace. And this sounds like the complete opposite of that. So I don't find it a particularly attractive vision. But for some, this is, if all you have is the only resources you can draw upon to give you hope for the future are the resources of technology and these kinds of things, then, you're going to have to build humanity towards divinity. This is how we do it. one upgrade at a time, right? Whereas I just guess I have a very different vision for what the future of humanity looks like, and it's not that we become into divinity through upgrades. I think it's a very different picture of what the restoration of humanity looks like.
Man, this conversation is so good, Anthony, but we wanted to make the most out of it because, you know, you gave us your
Sure.
you're giving us your valuable time. And I just want to ask you on AGI, because I know this is like a big thing. It was actually somebody is a friend of mine. Well, it's actually a relative, my brother, who's really into like math. And he really wanted to know, like, what is AGI? How do we align AGI with human goals? And
Right.
how close are we to AGI? Yeah, so maybe
Yeah.
just
So
explain that for those of us who are like more like or are laymen.
yeah. So AI is just artificial intelligence. AGI is artificial general intelligence. And typically, this is defined somehow like the ability of the level of intelligence of a human. So once a machine is able to do anything a human can do, but better, right? We will have achieved artificial general intelligence. So right now we have a lot of rather highly specialized AI. You can build a system that can play chess. You can build a system that can mimic human text. You can build a system that can create images. And then there's there's some features of more generalized intelligence in some of the more recent, like ChatGPT, the latest versions. It can do a variety of things. It can write poems. It's getting better at math. It's not very good right now, but it's slowly getting better at solving mathematical problems. And so AGI would be an artificial general intelligence that could do anything that a smart human could do across all domains. And the belief is that once we achieve artificial general intelligence, then it just spirals out of control because it's human intelligence that builds AI. But once artificial general intelligence is achieved, it can be constantly upgrading itself. And it can do it without getting tired. People sleep. The person who's writing programming has to take a nap. This can just do it constantly, be getting smarter and smarter along the way, which then allows it to upgrade itself faster and faster and faster, right? Mm-hmm. And so just get this runaway system that once we hit AGI, overnight or within a couple of weeks, it would just take off and upgrade itself ad infinitum. Beyond, and the only limits would be limits of computational power or things like this. But the system itself would then be able to start solving those problems and finding more efficient ways to create chips and giving instructions to build plants to make better chips, computer chips, to make even more efficient computing. And then the thing just runs wild. And then the question is, what use is there for humanity at that point? Some rather significant leaders in the tech space rather openly admit that they think that our ultimate destiny is to replace humanity with this technology, right? Like, it will become irrelevant. It's like maybe we'll be the pets to this AGI.
Is it kind of like evolution narrative? We're just gonna be like surpassed or become like an extinct animal?
Yeah, that's right. So some use the comparison of Neanderthals, right? Homo sapien was, although not as physically dominant in some ways, able to outsmart and therefore outsurvive Neanderthal. And you can expect perhaps the same from Homo sapien. Humans just won't be able to compete with something that's more intelligent than us. I think these narratives, though, it's like there's reasons to question them and challenge them. These narratives are primarily made by a bunch of tech guys who are just really geeky, math and science nerds. And of course, they kind of think about things as like intelligence is the ultimate good. But you might question this in two ways. One is, what is really the definition of intelligence, right? There is a kind of intelligence that's very good at playing chess and doing these kinds of things, but is that too narrow of a form of intelligence? And then the second is, it's not obvious that even if you can achieve a broad intelligence, that the system takes on any kind of goals, any kind of life of its own, right? So are we close to this? We're nowhere close to anything that mirrors any kind of consciousness. People in AI research don't even talk about consciousness anymore. This is not even part of the discussion. There's no conceivable way that anyone can think of to move towards anything like consciousness. So if we were to be replaced by these machines, they would just be machines running protocols that have no inner experience, have no inner life, right? There's no true reflection, there's no true thinking taking place. It just applies to the statistics. It's just running patterns, right? That's all it is. But even I think the goal of AGI has some serious challenges. There's computational limits I've already hinted at. This is why there's a lot of pressure, like China and Taiwan and the United States trying to acquire computer chips. There's a limit on the kind of chips we need. We're starting to hit the wall of computational limits. We'll probably make breakthroughs in the next decade that will help us move a little bit further. But there's a lot of barriers, and I don't think that you should expect 10 years from now you're going to have conscious robots walking around and us enslaved or anything like this. I think this is the mythology run amok, and it probably comes from an overtly abstract, overly niche view of what intelligence is that fails to account for the significance of us being embodied. Like, what is wisdom? Like, what does it mean to have embodied intelligence rather than just the ability to solve abstract problems? And I think there's a difference there. So my big prediction is probably 10 years from now, we'll look back and we'll be like, yeah, we really oversimplify this. Humans are much richer, more interesting creatures than we thought. Intelligence is much more complicated than we thought. We can't just reduce this to the simple models that we were trying to.
And in the spirit of Dostoevsky, right, he has this quote in The Idiot where he says, the causes of human action, I'm kind of paraphrasing, are much more complex, right, than we give them credit. So, some people reduce humans to just like matter or just money or urged by some sort of biological or sexual desire. But I really like your point about this sort of complexity in human nature. And Kezia looks like she wants to ask something.
Yeah,
And I
sure.
think now we're going to transition a little bit to hear a little bit more about you, right? You mentioned you're not only a mathematician, right? You're also a human being, right? You have these you're a self-described Christian educator. And I think this is an opportunity for our audience maybe to know a little bit more about you. Like, a lot of people might be surprised, like, wow, you have this Rice PhD, Stanford educated mathematician who is a Christian, right? Who is teaching at a Christian institution. So I'm gonna give the word to Kezia because I think she wants to ask you
Yeah,
something.
it's by delving a little deeper into artificial heart, we are proposing a reconnection with God and with your essence. And my question for you is, how can math make us think more deeply about these questions? Because we have one big challenge right now. First one, and the world is crazy because in my perception, and I work here in social media, I have a lot of followers, and sometimes someone writes for me and I feel the person is so far away about God, and then it's in my we I am Guilherme proposing an artificial heart reconnect to human and more close of God. And for you, Anthony, how can math make us think more deeply about these questions?
Yeah.
Make more sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of points, I think, of contact between mathematics and contemplation of the infinite, contemplation of eternity, these grand themes. And there's lots of ways I would think which mathematics invites us into that. But something I've spent some time thinking about is just the very practice of doing mathematics, and what our ability to do mathematics tells us about what it means to be human, right? And so I think I would summarize this as such. I think our ability to do mathematics elevates our view of humanity. And I think an elevated view of humanity inclines you towards belief in God. And so maybe I can break that down a little bit. There was a paper in the 1960s by a Nobel-winning physicist, theoretical mathematician Eugene Wigner. And he wrote this paper called The Unreasonable Effectiveness of Mathematics. And what he was really interested in is the ability of mathematics to describe the natural world. So why is it that people like Newton can come along and have very simple equations for his laws of motion? Or even Einstein. It's like, yes, in one sense, what they're doing is very deep and profound. But in another sense, the math is quite nice. It works out very nicely. And what he reflects on in this paper is often the mathematical development predates the discovery of its usefulness in science. So mathematicians are just playing around, having fun by developing abstract concepts. And it's not until much later that we see how those abstract mathematical structures are necessary to describe the world. So a very simple example of this, we can do much more complicated ones, but a simple example of this would be something like imaginary numbers, where, perhaps you remember in secondary school, at some point you start learning about like the square root of -1, and you call it like imaginary numbers. You're like, this is wild, like I thought real numbers are enough. Now we have imaginary numbers. But the introduction of imaginary numbers really was kind of just mathematicians playing around. It was introduced as a way to help solve some problems that wouldn't have solutions otherwise. And it was a useful tool and kind of developed into a whole mathematicians being like, oh, there's a fun mathematical theory here. Let me unpack this. But it was just a mathematical construct. You jump forward, and you can't do modern physics without imaginary numbers. They're essential to describe our world. And maybe that seems strange because like they're called imaginary, but they're actually quite useful. You really need them to for our various models of the world. And there's many more examples of this where mathematicians, particularly the 1800s, develop a whole lot of abstract mathematics. Why? Because they think it's interesting. They would say things like it's beautiful, it's elegant, it's maybe they even think it's true in some sense. They're pursuing the true and the beautiful. They develop this abstract structure. But then 100 years later, a physicist comes along and he's like, that's exactly what I need to describe this phenomenon, this natural phenomenon. And so somehow...
Is that similar, Anthony, to... I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Polanyi, like personal knowledge. He kind of has like the same argument, like before heliocentrism became a thing, you already had mathematicians that were doing the calculus to show that before like the physics came in. And he almost uses like a religious language. It's like this person was so convicted of their theory or of their calculus that it will be vindicated at the end of the day.
So you do have, so Wigner, when he talks about this feature of mathematics, he uses the word miracle to describe it. 12 times in his paper, he calls this miraculous. And it's a miracle that he doesn't know who to describe it to. He just says, it's a wonderful gift that, there's a great line, he says, how mathematics, the applicability of mathematics to model the world. It says, it's a wonderful gift that we neither deserve nor understand. So he doesn't know what to do with it. He's just like, we've been given this incredible gift. Even in the paper, he has this throwaway line where he says, it's really hard to try to understand how, if we're just animals, how we're able to, if we're just come about some unguided process, how are we capable of describing the universe in such deep ways? Because we're not just describing, it on the level of, okay, here's how animals move so I can, improve my survivability or something like this. No, it's like we can actually model the fabric of reality. We can go out and predict the existence of various things like the Higgs boson with our standard model of physics, and then we can spend, billions of dollars building a massive particle accelerator. And it was like, oh yeah, that math, it was right. Now we verify the existence of this subatomic particle. And this is just wild. It's like, why is our math so good at describing the world? And so I would say, if nothing else, this should elevate your view of what it means to be human. Like, it's a really special thing to be a human. And maybe you think, like, well, I don't know if I could do that math, but just humanity as a whole, right? Like, there are some things that when humanity as a whole achieves them, it's like, it's a privilege to be a part of that humanity. And I suspect you could do the math. So it's like, this is going to elevate your conception of humanity. You might just leave it a mystery. You might just say, I don't know. But what I find is that the Christian narrative, or just the more fundamental Abrahamic belief in a creator, makes really good sense of this, right? Why is the order in nature? Einstein, he put the question this way. He said, the most incomprehensible thing about a universe is that it is comprehensible. So why is the comprehensibility to the world? Well, if the world is designed by a mind, then we would expect such a comprehensibility. And if we are made in the image of that creator, then it's no surprise that our minds are able to latch onto and understand that is, my dog, love my dog, he can't comprehend the deep book of reality. His mind's just not equipped for it. But there's something about the human mind that is equipped to be able to not just study, things here on Earth, but to look out and develop theories of, the fundamental fabric of the cosmos. And this is really deep insight that we have. And so I think it should elevate your view of what it means to be human. And I think in elevating your view of what it means to be human, perhaps it can open you up to the possibility that there's a deeper structure, and somehow our minds are in the mold of whatever that structure of the universe is. For me, the doctrine of being made in the divine image explains that, right? I think this is like, why can we do mathematics? Because we're made in the image of God, and God created the universe using mathematics. If you have another explanation, go for it, but that's what I found to be most compelling.
And how does your faith, like, let's say Christianity, how does it help you make sense of things? Both as, somebody who's a mathematician, who's in this world of science, of STEM, and also as a person, as a human being.
Yeah. I think something that really draws me to Christian faith is the sense-making power of it. So C.S. Lewis, he has this great line about how he wasn't a Christian. He converted to Christianity in his 20s. But he says, I came to believe in Christianity as I believe in the risen sun. Not just because I can see it, but because by it I see everything else. And so what I found is, yes, I think like there's good historical evidence for the resurrection. Like I think there's a good case just for the truthfulness of Christianity. That's all true. But independent of just how true it is in itself, I find that Christianity provides me a framework that helps me make sense of the world as a whole, right? It can help me make sense of my scientific life, of my job as a mathematician, of why I can find order and structure there. But then it also translates into thinking about relationships. It translates into thinking about suffering and pain, and it translates into thinking about like hope for humanity, right? And so just the robustness of Christian faith to translate into all those different domains, I find that in some ways my faith allows me to be a more complete human, right? Like it gives me an in to engage. It's, no, I'm not just going to be a narrow, just trained and just doing science, but I also am interested in art because I think that, and this is some great MC Escher art behind me.
Let's go, it looks nice.
Yeah, I love it. It's stuff. But it's because it's like I have an appreciation. So if God is both the good, the true, and the beautiful, you start seeing these things converge, right? So my pursuit of truth, my pursuit of goodness for morality, my pursuit of beauty, these things all converge on the same place. And I found that, that it gives you a wonderful connectedness to life that otherwise you could maybe live and you feel quite segmented. You might feel like the world is quite incoherent. This is one of the problems of postmodernism, is a sense of incoherency, right? And I find Christianity just gives you a wonderful connectedness to the world. It's wonderful sense-making power.
Awesome, Anthony. And when I think of you, man, I remember a lot like Isaac Newton. You're like a really smart guy. And, we're both Seventh-day Adventists. You're at a Seventh-day Adventist institution, a Christian Seventh-day Adventist institution. And a lot of people know Newton only for his Principia, only for his science. And you are at a school that has an original manuscript of Sir Isaac Newton's commentary on Revelation, right? So you've been able, right, to balance this faith, this Christian faith, with your your pursuit as a mathematician, as a professor, as an academic. Tell us a little bit about this other facet, this other face of Sir Isaac Newton that people might not know about, and even the importance that he has for us, right? As those, well, I should say those of us who are Seventh-day Adventists specifically.
Yeah. So, as you're saying, people know Newton as a scientist, and then they might think, like, they hear about his theology and they're like, oh, why did he have that interest on that? That was a weird hobby or something. But in many ways, he was a theologian first and foremost. Newton wanted to know and understand the mind of God. And so Newton, as many people in his day, recognized that God has revealed himself through two books. He's revealed himself in the book of nature as well as in the book of scripture. And so Newton took the study of both those books very seriously. And you can see how his faith and his science informed one another. People often think of Newton for like the apple falling on his head, right? And when that happens, he has the grand insight that the same fundamental force that brings an apple down on his head is the same fundamental force that causes the moon to travel around the earth, developing his universal law of gravitation. Prior to Newton, there was a sense that there's one law for how things operate on Earth, things fall down. There's a second set of law for how things go in the cosmos, they go around. He unified Earth and cosmos with a single law. But when you realize that Newton took scripture seriously, including just at the very beginning, Genesis 1:1, which says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, you can begin to understand how Newton he expected there to be some kind of law. He expected there to be some kind of regularity to describe both the heavens and the earth, because he thought there was one mind behind both of them, right? So it's precisely because Newton had belief in a single creator of heaven and earth, Genesis 1:1, that he was expecting there to be some kind of coherence, that there shouldn't be a separate set of laws for how things work in the heavens and how things work on earth. And so these theological convictions that I can go out, I can study, I can make sense of nature, I can describe this, we can find laws to describe this, that if I believe there was a lawgiver, then I should be able to find the laws that the lawgiver uses to govern the universe. These are all deeply Christian ideas, and also shared by other Abrahamic faiths as well. But these deep convictions then lead into his scientific work. But then he wasn't satisfied just to understand how God created the universe. He also wanted to understand how God acted in history, right? And so that's where his study of scripture, particularly prophecy, played a role, because he thought it was in prophecy that God was revealing his action throughout history. And so he took intense interest in the prophetic books of scripture, particularly Daniel and Revelation. He wrote quite a bit on it. When he died, this work of his was not valued at the time. So his religious writings were sold cheaply at various auctions, distributed around the world. And it's only been throughout the last century that scholars have kind of rediscovered the importance of this for his life and his thinking. And there's been an effort to collect and categorize those religious works. But yeah, that's how we came across such a copy. It's Newton classifying what Scripture says about the second coming of Christ. So that's the document we have at Andrews University. I take my calculus students to see it every semester. So it's like we're studying calculus, which Newton invented. He went home from university because of the pandemic. Maybe some of us can relate. And when he was home, doing lockdown from the pandemic, it was one of the waves of the bubonic plague. So he comes home from Cambridge, and he's like, what am I going to do with my free time? He didn't have Netflix, so instead he invents calculus, right?
Exactly.
I have my students learning calculus, which Newton, along with others, developed. But then I want them to also see this other side of him, right? So we go and we look at this Newton document, and we can see that just as he was interested in a systematic study of the natural world, he was also interested in a systematic study of scripture, and particularly of prophecy. So Newton was an influential figure for what would later to grow into the Millerite movement and then the Adventist movement. he took a historicist approach to prophecy. It tracks very closely with that of William Miller. There were a couple differences. Some of it was because he was living, for instance, before the French Revolution, and so his understanding of some things would be a little bit different. The way he put some dates are a little bit different because he didn't quite understand what would happen throughout the following centuries. But if you look at tracks very closely, his interpretation of like the Statue of Daniel, the nations, all of this, and his book was in William Miller's library. So there probably was some kind of intellectual heritage there, perhaps some kind of influence from Newton to William Miller. William Miller actually named one of his sons.
Kids, yeah, Isaac Newton Miller.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So clearly, William Miller had a high respect for Newton. And then, you continue to see from William Miller down through the rest of the Advent movement, that legacy continued. So I recommend, if you haven't, there's several of his writings. Perhaps the main one is his study of the Apocalypse of Revelation. So it's his reflections on the Apocalypse of St. John. That's a great read, as well as Daniel as well. And you can see quite a bit of it tracks very closely. It's pretty much the events surrounding the French Revolution where things began diverging, because he didn't live there through it yet. So he didn't know how the history would unfold, right? Yeah.
But he came very close, right? Because he mentions that there will be some events or like disturbances at the time when those events would happen. Anthony, do you have time for one last question? We want to do one final question, and thank you again for your time and your presence. And I'll give Kezia the honor.
And my last question for you is very wonderful this moment, because you inspire us, and how your mind is totally different. You accurate mind, and then you think is totally logical. It's very good. It's very good for me. You improve my abilities when I hear you. And my last question for you is, in a world where many persons of faith are attacked by some incompatibility between their faith and the cruel reality of the world, how should believers have to deal with this difficult question of that? And I give you the freedom to decide what those hard questions are. It's because honestly, we live in this hard moment, and honestly, be Christian this moment is very hard, because the times is hard for someone had faith, and these Christians every time in different circumstances receive attacked. And what's your perception about this? What do you believe?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's difficult question.
I guess what you're saying, Kezi, you're kind of asking him, how can we kind of reconcile our faith
Exactly.
with, let's say, the cruel reality of the world, right? I guess kind of like
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, there's a couple of directions one could go. So it's like, where's the tension? You might think one tension is like faith with suffering, and certainly you might think that it's no secret that the problem of evil is a very hard problem. I think it's a problem for everyone. I mean, how do we deal with the fact that there is extreme suffering and evil in the world? But when you actually look at global surveys of faith, it's some of the places with the greatest suffering that has the highest faith, right? So although it seems like, yes, the problem of evil is a pronounced problem, it's the places where faith is most challenged are some of the most prosperous places in the world. And the places where faith is most dynamic and strongest are some of the places that have some of the most challenging conditions for living. And I think that just shows experientially, people have discovered that giving up on faith doesn't solve the problem of evil. You still have evil in the world, right? Like there's still evil.
Exactly.
It's like God, why would you permit all of this evil? It's a good question, hard question. But you give up on God, the evil is still there, right?
Yeah, and not to cut you off, Anthony. It's kind of that quote from Night by Elie Wiesel, like with God, against God, but never without God, right? Because that alternative just seems so unbearable.
Right, because in some sense, that's you giving up on hope then, right? Unless your hope is, AGI is going to come and solve all the problems, which I'm highly skeptical of. But even maybe that is you creating just a new God, right? Like everyone has some kind of God that they are counting on to deliver them. And if you give up on the God of Scripture, the God of Abraham, you're going to create some new God that you're going to trust as your Savior. Good luck with that. But I don't know if that's really the so the problem of evil. It's hard, but experientially, it seems many people find that faith actually gives them more resources, not less, to engage with it. There are other problems. I think one challenge is there's a challenge of secularity, where secularity, not necessarily in everyone becoming less religious, but secularity is just a lot of pluralism, a lot of mingling. You're constantly up against people who believe differently than yourself, right? And one of the results of constantly being in contact with people who believe differently than yourself is it's going to cause you to ask questions you maybe didn't ask before, right? It's these things are not shared by everyone. So, why do I think this? Why do I believe that? Two things I would say help there. One is I found it really helpful to engage other people's worldviews with curiosity. I found it makes my own faith and my own life richer. To not see it as a threat if someone believes differently than me. I'm interested and curious why I see that as a threat. But then second, to realize that this challenge of doubt is also not a uniquely Christian challenge. And I found it to be true that when I interact with, develop a friendship with someone from a very different worldview, it might make me sit down and ask myself, well, why do I believe that? But it's making them do the same thing, right? And they're going to sit down, they're going to be like, what do I think is ultimate hope? What, so we both are sitting down asking hard questions, but if for the believer, this is creating skepticism, on the flip side, perhaps this is actually introducing seeds of belief in the other person. And I find that really helpful. It's like the very same interaction that makes you sit down and go like, I could be wrong. It's also making them sit down and go, I could be wrong. And that's exciting. Like we're both reflecting more deeply on what we believe and hopefully are coming to a richer understanding of the world. So I think that's a very good thing. I think the last thing I'll say is something I got from Euler. So Euler was one of the great mathematicians of modernity. And Euler wrote a little pamphlet responding to the free-thinking movement that was coming out of France at the time. So out of France, there was this kind of atheistic free-thinking movement that was critiquing Scripture, critiquing Christian belief, and it was claiming that there were various contradictions within Christian belief, within the Bible. And Euler writes a response to this. Euler, besides being perhaps one of the greatest mathematicians of all time, also very dedicated to his faith, high view of Scripture. And he responds by saying, you're pointing out these supposed contradictions in Christian faith, supposed contradictions in the Bible. He says, but my experience as a mathematician is that when I'm doing mathematics, I often run up against something that looks like a contradiction. It's like I'm going through, I can't quite figure out, like, especially when I'm developing new mathematics, I'm at the boundary, it's like things aren't quite adding up the way you expect them to. Something seems off. And he says, when that happens, I never throw up my hands in defeat and say, mathematics must be broken, I'm done. Walk away. I lose faith in mathematics, it's broken. No, rather the response is one of intellectual humility, one of, there's probably something I don't quite understand. There's probably something I'm missing. Let me wrestle with this. Let me take some time to think more about this. Let me talk to some other people, see if we can sort this out. Maybe in a week you solve it. Maybe not. Maybe it takes you a month. Maybe it takes you a year. Maybe you spend your whole life not quite sure how these things fit together. But the response isn't to throw up and say, "Oh, mathematics is broken," because you see how fruitful mathematics is. It's so useful for so many other things.
Mm-hmm.
So don't let some little things you don't quite understand bother you. Let yourself sit with that tension. And his point is, we should probably do the same thing with Christian belief, right? You've found Christian belief to be a source of deep meaning, a source of great sense making, able to make sense of the world. Yeah, there are probably some things that you may come across that are hard to understand. That's fine. Like, wrestle with it. That's okay to tease that out. You may not figure it out in a week. You may not figure it out in a month. You may not figure it out in 10 years, but that's okay. That just shows you the depth and the richness of belief. And it invites you to further interrogation. And so I find that when there are things within Scripture, things within Christian belief that I struggle to understand, I try to take a posture of humility rather than posture of
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Anthony. I promised you guys a high IQ conversation. I delivered, so I'm really happy, and we're really grateful to have you here. And you're invited again whenever you want.
Sure.
If there's anything you want to promote for what you're doing at your work at Andrews, you're always welcome here in the pod. And again, we just want to thank you. You really inspire us to study and to really go deeper in our faith and in our intellectual and spiritual pursuits. I want to hand over the final word to Kezia as we conclude, and she'll make her final remarks. And then we also, if you want to say some final remarks to our audience, we also want to give you the floor, or if there's anything you want to promote and show to our audience.
Yeah. Do you have the opportunity right now for promote your project? Do you have
I
in
don't
Andrews?
have
We live
anything.
in Andrews,
No,
6 months ago,
I,
my husband studied over there MEDP program.
Oh yeah, I mean, you guys hit us up at Andrews University. We've got a lot of great student programs and things going on, so you can always check that out. But I just want to say thanks for hosting me. This was a real joy and a real privilege. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anthony, for this opportunity. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing with us how deeply your story and your experience, Christian experience you live, and continue. Just continue, because sometimes I think, God, what do you wait for us? What do you wait for me? And God has a proposal about everyone. God chose you, and your God give you one big and special gift for you, because honestly, math, it's my I don't like math. I give my best when I study in high school, but God give you one special gift for you, and then share with us how your experience and math, Christian experience, and impact another lives. God blessing you, and the artificial heart open the door for you, for another ones, for share with us this how deeply experience do you have with God, and your gift God give for you. Okay, thanks so much
Thanks so
for this time.
much, my friend. And Kezia will send you our merchandise.
Beautiful.
And once we're back in stock, we also want to send you one of these complimentary mugs. Faith does not come from the miracle, but it is the miracle that comes from faith. I think that was kind of one of the themes that we touched upon.
Yeah.
And may we carry that on with us as we leave. Thank you so much. And thank you again for your time and for this excellent conversation.
Oh, someone is. Hold on.
I'm saying.
Ready for you. Was introduced to Anthony by David G. Someone appreciate your work and Andrew with math, but particularly your Christian example to us and your students.
Yeah. Hey.
Good guy. Thank you. Thanks so much, Anthony. God bless you.
God bless. Cheers.
God bless you, my friend. Take care.
Guilherme, we continue here in artificial art with
Hey,
this big
English
opportunity
or
for making this
Portuguese,
merchandise.
Kézia?
Ok, vamos falar agora em português.
Voltou. Cara, que
Voltamos.
live fantástica, né, Kézia?
Cara, a galera
Nível,
ficou
assim,
aqui.
essa é uma live que pra mim, assim, o nível do QI é alto. Eu não sei se todo mundo vai curtir, mas é uma live que tinha que ser
Cara,
feita.
high
E
level. High level, gostei muito.
elevou o
Cara,
nível, velho, do
ele
podcast.
conseguiu conectar de forma simples, cara, a matemática com o cristianismo de uma forma que eu nunca ouvi ninguém falar. É justamente esse tipo de pessoas que nós estamos buscando aqui no Artificial Heart. A galera que ficou aqui, você viu que tem muitos estudantes dele que ficou aqui acompanhando a live? Thank you guys for watch this podcast. Share this live and other ones.
Yep,
It's
shout
big
out
opportunity for
to
us.
the Andrews University math students. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.
Sure. And faço merchan em inglês agora, Guilherme.
All right,
Fale sobre nossa camisa,
we
nosso
got our
projeto.
Artificial Hearts merchandise. Get your t-shirt as quickly as possible. There's very few of them in stock. Anthony is gonna have his, so make sure to get yours and contact us on our Instagram, YouTube, website, and we will make sure to deliver that to you as quickly as possible.
Nós estamos em todas as plataformas: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Que mais, Guilherme? Rumble. Nós estamos em todas. Você pode adquirir através do www.artificialheart.com e você pode comprar sua camisa e você pode comprar mugs, canecas, capas para celular, case for cell phone, case for AirPods, water bottle. Ajude a gente, fala para o pessoal em inglês, Guilherme, ajude nesse projeto, porque é uma oportunidade de você transformar um livro que é extraordinário cristão em um filme em breve para você poder assistir no seu melhor stream.
So everybody that's watching us, please support this project. If you want to see this classic of world literature, this classic of Christian literature on the live screen, please give us a shout out. Please support our merchandise and please support this project. Thank you all for tuning in. We love you and we appreciate the support. So stay tuned. We have a lot more. We're gonna have even more in March. So we're really looking forward for you guys to visit us. Take care, and we wish you all a wonderful evening.
Thank you, guys. Boa noite. Nos vemos na próxima terça, certo, Guilherme?
Combinado, viu? E aguarde que se você gostou dessa, aguarde.
Mágica também. Valeu, Guilherme. Tamo junto, mano.